Should you use Tekton or Argo Workflows? Which one is better? Which one should you adopt? Within the category of self-managed Kubernetes-Native CI/CD pipelines type of tools, there are two dominant players in the market, and that is Tekton and Argo Workflows. So let's compare those two based on different criteria and see which one might be a better choice for you, if any. Maybe none of those is a good choice. Let's compare those two and see which one is a better choice. Now, before we proceed, let me state from the very beginning, or almost the beginning, that I will not go into details, into depth of either of those tools. I will assume that you already watched the videos. If you haven't, they are in the description. There is a video about Argo Workflows. Actually, there is more than one video about Argo Workflows, and there is a video about Tekton as well. So check them out if you would like to see more details or go deeper into either of those two. And right now, we are just going to compare them, and we are going to do that based on a few criteria. We are going to see the differences in templating, pipelines, web UIs, event management, catalog or hub, documentation, and community. Those will be 7 major criteria we are going to use to compare those two tools. So let's get going and see which one is better. I did a couple of things before I started recording this session. I created a cluster, I installed Argo Workflows, and I installed Tekton. That's about it. The commands that set up everything that needs to be set up in advance, as well as the commands that I'm about to run right now, are available in a gist, and gist is in the description of this video, so go and check it out if you want to follow along or maybe replicate it some later time and so on and so forth. Let's start with templating. It is important because it allows us to not repeat ourselves, right? We should be able to take reusable steps or groups of steps and put them into templates so that we do not repeat ourselves and so that everybody can use those templates or predefined steps inside of their pipelines without much work involved. So let's take a look at the templates provided by Argo Workflows and by Tekton. I will be showing Argo Workflows over here, and this is where I will show Tekton. You will see them in parallel so that you can easily compare one with the other. By the way, I tried to make definitions for the pipelines and the templates that we will be using as similar as it can get so that we can easily compare apples with apples instead of, apples with oranges. So, templates in Argo Workflows look like this. And templates in Tekton look like this. Now, if I go to the first one, here we are, right? They are very similar. They are fulfilling the same goals. In both cases, there is a template, except that in case of Tekton, it's called task, but it serves the same purpose. Anyway, there are templates to build container images based on Canico. And if you take a look at it, they're almost exactly the same. They're all Kubernetes custom resource definitions. They have some input parameters, and they have some volumes. Here it is. And another volume over here, and there are some steps. And in this case, we have a container based on Canico image and then some arguments. And in case of Tekton, it is also a step based on the same image using the same arguments and so on and so forth. So if we ignore different syntax, slightly different syntax, very similar, but slightly different syntax, then we can conclude that templates or steps in case of Tekton are serving the same purpose, are more or less the same, they're doing the same things. I'm not showing you everything that they can do, but trust me, they are more or less the same. The differences are insignificant. So let's jump into pipelines and see whether we can spot a difference over there, whether definitions of the pipelines are better in one over the other. For Argo Workflows, the pipeline could look like this. And in case of Tekton, it could be something like this. And again, what they do is more or less the same. We can define top-level parameters. We can define some tasks. In case of Tekton, it's called tasks. In case of Argo Workflows, it's called templates, but still more or less the same. And those tasks, those, let's say, steps, can be executed sequentially. They can be executed in parallel. We can have dependencies between steps and so on and so forth. Same thing, more or less. They can all reference some externally defined templates or steps, and they can all have some additional arguments. They can mount volumes, and it's the same. There is no significant difference here either. So let's try to execute those pipelines and see whether one is better at running pipelines than the other. By the way, trust me, I will find something that is better in one over the other. So this is not a video that says everything is the same. It's just that everything is the same so far, give or take. For now, we're going to run pipelines from CLI. Later on, we will explore how to do those things as a reaction to some events. And that's where it's going to get interesting. But for now, let's try to execute those pipelines from the CLI. And in case of Argo, it would be Argo CLI. And then the namespace where we want to run those pipelines, it will be workflows. And we want to submit. And the file with the pipeline is Argo Workflows pipeline YAML. In case of Tekton, it is slightly different. We will first apply the pipeline inside of the cluster, which is kubectl apply -- file name Tekton pipeline YAML, and then we need the pipeline run. And I defined the pipeline run in a file, which is this one, Tekton run. So this definition, pipeline run, tells Tekton how to run a pipeline that is already defined inside of the cluster, and basically it is a reference to the pipeline itself. We could add parameters and a few other things here, like for example, I'm defining the workspace, meaning the storage that should be used to share the state between steps. Unlike Argo Workflows that submits an existing pipeline and like that executes a run of that pipeline, in case of Tekton, we would create a pipeline run, and that's what I'm going to do right now with kubectl create -- file name Tekton run.yaml. Now I'm going to execute both. Here we are, that's Argo Workflows, and here's the Tekton pipeline. Since we are using kubectl for Tekton, we just get the information that the resource was created, while Argo gives us a bit more information, but nothing out of this world. So let's take a look at the list of the pipeline runs inside of the cluster. In case of Argo Workflows, that would be Argo, and then -- namespace workflows, wherever we are running them, and list, right? We get a list of the pipeline runs. And in case of Tekton, it is very similar. tkn -- namespace Tekton builds, and then pipeline run, and then list, right? And we get the list of pipeline runs that are currently running or those that already executed, right? We can get additional information about pipelines. In case of Argo, that would be -- namespace workflows, and then get at latest. We want information about the latest pipeline run, and here it is. Those are the steps. That's some additional information. And in case of Tekton, it's tkn, and then -- namespace Tekton builds, and pipeline run describe, and then -- last, right? Again, we get the steps of the pipeline. They all succeeded. Some additional information. More or less the same. Still, everything is give or take the same. Finally, let's see how we can retrieve the logs, and that's Argo -- namespace workflows, and logs at latest, and we want to follow them in case it's still running. I don't think it's running, but anyways, here are the logs. Nothing special really. And in case of Tekton, it would be tkn -- namespace. What is the namespace? I forgot already. Yeah, Tekton builds, pipeline run logs. We want the last one, and we want to follow. Here we are. Again, we get the logs. Still the same. This is disappointing. I mean, it is great because that means that they are mature and that they are doing more or less the same thing. Is a potentially good thing, but I'm hoping to show you something that is truly different between the two so that you can say, hey, this one is better. We'll get there, I promise. We are going to find something that is better in one over the other. Let's take a look at the UIs, right? We want to see maybe pipelines running in a UI. So I can execute Argo server and I get the UI running in this case on localhost 2746. Let's open it in a browser. I have only one pipeline run so far. This is a demo. I can go there, I can see all the steps. I can see the summary of the step, containers involved in the step. Actually, the first one doesn't have any container, the second one does. Inputs and outputs, and the standard stuff, right? I can zoom in, zoom out, filter, search for certain things, and I can see the logs from here, and so on and so forth. Besides seeing the pipelines, I can see workflow templates. Those are the templates. I don't have any workflow template. I have cluster workflow templates. Here they are. I can see cron workflows. I can see event flow, Now event flow is cool, but we're going to get to that later because I did not set up any event flow yet. We'll get there. We can see event sources. Again, we don't have them, but I will talk about them later. They're very important. Sensors, and so on and so forth. We have stuff, right? Random stuff that we might or might not need. Now let's take a quick look at Tekton UI and see whether there is something interesting over there. I did not install ingresses, which I normally would do. So it would be kubectl -- namespace Tekton pipelines, and we want to port forward. What do we want to port forward? Service called Tekton dashboard. And the port is 1997, and I will expose it as the same port on localhost. There we are, and now I can open it in a browser as well. We can see the pipelines, Toolkit, the one that I just executed, overview, YAML, pipeline runs. This is probably the one that you will use most of the time. We can go to that pipeline run and see it. Now this is one of the differences. Tekton dashboard looks nicer. I cannot say that it is functionally better, but it looks nicer, and that could be a plus for all I know, right? We can see the log, status, details, same things more or less as Argo Workflows, except that this one looks better, let's say. So if you ignore the looks of the dashboard, again, the same. But now, and this is now the crucial moment, now we're coming to a serious difference. The next thing we are going to explore is going to give an edge to one of the two tools. Bear with me. Argo Workflows works very well with Argo Events. And Argo Events are absolutely awesome. They allow us to create sensors in triggers so that we can create events based on things happening in Git repositories, things happening in our Kubernetes cluster. It can be a simple HTTP request. It could be pushing an image to an image registry and so on and so forth. Independently of what we are exploring today, Argo Events is probably the best solution for triggering events. And events can be many, many different things. And events are extremely important for CI/CD pipelines. To begin with, almost everybody triggers pipeline runs based on pushes and commits and all other sorts of activities in Git repositories. So as a minimum, we need webhook events to trigger some pipeline runs, but we normally need much more because there are many other types of events happening in our cluster, and Argo Workflows together with Argo Events works amazingly well. When we combine those two, we get a full CI/CD pipeline type of solution that does more or less everything we need it to do. Enough about Argo Events. If you're interested in more details about Argo Events, there are links to two videos in the description. One, how to use Argo Events in isolation, and another one, how to combine Argo Events with other tools, including Argo Workflows. Moving to Tekton, Tekton events are, how to put it, horrible. They're hocus pocus, something put very quickly and doesn't really work well. It is essentially a set of shell commands executed as Tekton pipeline runs. It's really, really bad, at least when compared to Argo Events. So if we look at events within the tool itself, and if we consider Argo Events as being part of Argo Workflows, which they are in a way, Argo Workflows with events wins big time, at least inside of this category. Now that does not have to be important because nothing prevents you from using Argo Events together with Tekton. You can do that. It's going to be a slightly more complicated than using it with Argo Workflows, but it's doable. Or you can use any other eventing mechanism to trigger Tekton pipelines. But Tekton itself and its community and ecosystem provides, let's say, suboptimal solution. I was about to say horrible. It's not horrible, it's just not good. Next, let's take a look at catalogs or hubs or plugins. I mean, what I really want to take a look is how many reusable templates or tasks or components community created that can simplify our work. It's kind of pointless for each of us to reinvent the wheel because, hey, if you want to build, let's say, container images with Canico, and there are 57 other people or teams or companies that also build images with Canico, then we should be able to reuse that knowledge, that experience. GitHub Actions has a catalog of sorts, Jenkins has plugins, GitLab has something similar as well, and so on and so forth. Almost every single CI/CD pipeline type of solution has some sort of a catalog or whatever they call it. Fortunately for us, Argo Workflows has a catalog as well, so let's take a look at it. Here it is. This is the catalog of reusable steps. And there are, what's this, like 10 of them right now. And if you go to any of those, click the Get button, we get this pretty ugly, not well documented something, right? So there are 10 reusable steps in a user interface that is but ugly and not really very helpful, not very descriptive. Let's go to one more just in case. Let's say build kit, and same thing, yeah. So there is a serious lack of steps over here, or catalog items, or whatever it's called, and it's not really documented and so on and so forth. This is bad, at least at the time of this recording. But that does not mean that Tekton is much better, so let's take a look at Tekton. Here we are, let's take a look. How many do we have? Scroll, 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 scroll. There's a lot, right? This is not comparable to, let's say, GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions has much bigger catalog and most of the other tools. But compared to Argo Workflows, we can see that the community is really putting an effort to create a decent catalog of reusable steps. They call it hub, right? And if you go to any of those, let's say Golang test, we can see the parameters, we can see usage, we can see examples. There is a YAML that we can copy and paste. We can install it by clicking here, which is just a set of commands. There is versioning, we can see different versions of it, we can vote for it, and so on and so forth. This is absolutely awesome, it is amazing. So Tekton Hub wins over Argo Workflows catalog any time of the day, at least at the time of this recording. This is a well-created catalog, or hub as they call it. This is the edge that Tekton has so far over Argo Workflows. Now let's talk about documentation. Documentation is better in Tekton. It is simply better. It is better written. It contains all the information I ever thought I might need. It has more examples, and it has interactive tutorial in Katakode that will guide you from the beginning to the end on how to use Tekton in a very interactive manner. So it's absolutely awesome. Better documentation combined with Katakode interactive tutorial makes it better solution, at least from the documentation perspective. How about community? Both projects have vibrant community with sufficient number of contributors, a lot of activity, a lot of new features popping up all the time. So from the community perspective, at least when contributions are concerned, both are more or less on the same level. However, there are higher level projects built on top of Tekton. There is, let's say, Jenkins X and OpenShift pipelines and a few others. And those projects show a couple of things. To begin with, it means that Tekton is more like a building block for the final solution than the solution itself. And that is easily seen through initial design of Tekton. It was indeed created as a building block and not something that users should use directly. Over time, it got additional features that make it more usable, but it never got to the same level as Argo Workflows, mostly because it is not maybe meant to be on the same level, because there are other projects, other teams, and other companies taking Tekton and making something out of it. There is CloudBees with Jenkins X, there is OpenShift with pipelines, and a few others. So if we talk about community in a broader context, outside only of the core contributors, then Tekton wins. However, Argo Workflows combined with Argo Events might not need that broader community because it is a fully operational solution by itself. You do not need to combine it with additional projects and what's or not. It works by itself. Still, from the community perspective, Tekton has a slight edge simply because there are other teams outside of Tekton team that picked it up and are building solutions on top of it. So what would be the final verdict? Which one should you choose? Which one is better? It is hard to answer that question because for the most part, they're almost the same. They're very similar. There are certain differences that might or might not be important to you though. For example, Argo Workflows together with Argo Events is a fully operational solution that has everything that Tekton has plus good eventing system, and there are no CI/CD pipelines without events. As a minimum, we need to connect it with Git. Most likely, we need to trigger pipelines through many other events or types of events. On the other hand, Tekton has slightly better documentation, has a bigger catalog of predefined steps, and has more examples and tutorials. If you already picked one of the two, I would say stick with it. The differences are not so important for you to switch from Tekton to Argo Workflows or vice versa. But if you haven't used any of the two and you want to use one of those two, I would say that Argo Workflows together with Argo Events is slightly better solution simply because events work better. But that is true only if you're comparing Tekton with Argo Workflows. If you're comparing projects on top of Tekton with Argo Workflows, then suddenly it's not only a choice between Argo Workflows and Tekton, then it is a choice between Tekton by itself or Tekton with Jenkins-X or Tekton with OpenShift pipelines against Argo Workflows. And if you're willing to use one of those higher level solutions and they fit your use cases, then Tekton might be a better choice. However, those higher level solutions might not be a good fit for everybody because Jenkins-X is potentially great. It is actually great, but it is very opinionated and that might not be your cup of tea. On the other hand, OpenShift pipelines are mostly for OpenShift users. So if you're not an OpenShift user, that might not be the best choice. And then we might be back comparing Tekton with Argo Workflows. It is a tough choice because I love Tekton Hub, but I like Argo Events. I could use Argo Events with Tekton. On the other hand, I expect Argo Workflows catalog to grow very soon. Actually, I know that it will grow because there are plans to grow it drastically. Anyways, let's stop this madness. They are both good solutions. You cannot go wrong with either of the two as long as there are a couple of things that you have in mind. And that is that you want a self-managed solution. You don't want SaaS. You want to manage it yourself. Second, that you want a CI/CD pipeline type of solution that is Kubernetes-Native, which might not be the best choice for everybody. And finally, that you don't want to pay for support or enterprise something, what's not, right? If you're looking for community versions of CI/CD type of pipeline tools in Kubernetes, either of the two are great. And I expect that they will be even more and more similar over time because both communities are taking ideas from each other and making those products more similar over time.